I'm Diane Barrett. I'm here with Eve Sepulveda and the BE collection. It is 7/21/2023. And Eve, I'd like to start with your name and your career, occupation. How about that?
Sure. My name is Eve Sepulveda, and my career has been in the field of orthotics and prosthetics. So I make artificial limbs for people and bracing, limbs and braces.
What an interesting field. Are many
Definitely.
women in that field?
Pardon me?
Do you see a lot of women in that field?
There's been a growing number of women in this field, as well as a lot of healthcare fields in general. But it didn't used to be that way. It was primarily, primarily occupied by people of the male persuasion. And but in my class, in my graduating class from school, we had I think we had more women than men that year, but it was like one of the first years that we had more women than men in the class. So
And what was the total class number?
well, it's a small group. It was like 14 students. So I want to say maybe 9 were women. It was definitely skewed towards women, but that's asking me to remember everybody, and
Right.
For posterity's sake, I won't try to remember exactly, okay?
I won't call you to.
Okay.
So for people who don't know what that is,
Mhm.
can you tell us, can you define it a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So the field of prosthetics, so it's actually a twofold career. The prosthetics is it's art with a purpose, and you're making an artificial limb for people. And what that means is we create the interface between the person and the device. That's called a socket. And so we mold that to an individual. So that's very customized. And then we use that interface to then attach to the parts, like a foot, if it's a foot that's missing, or a whatever's missing. If it's a hand, then it's the hand or the elbow or whatever it is. We then assemble those parts, align those parts, optimize the alignment so that somebody can use it to the best of their ability. So that's the prosthetics part. So it's replacing a limb that's been lost. And then orthotics is actually not just your shoe inserts, really, but it's a field of all the different braces. So, you see people who need a knee brace, or somebody who's been paralyzed and needs, we call them CAFOs, which is knee, ankle, foot orthoses, so that they could walk. So it'll provide stability over one or more joints to allow mobility.
Do you happen to have any close to you now?
I do not. I do have.
Thought about that. I
Yeah,
should.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. Well, I wouldn't have had that here, but people have seen artificial limbs. I have I was trying to pull through my pictures, and I have a couple pictures of some old like in the old days it was like wood and foam feet
Right.
through the 70s and that. And really around in the 90s we started getting more into carbon, feet that seemed to be a little bit more common. And then in after the last big war conflict thing that the United States was involved in, we developed a lot of much more technology. So the technology of artificial limbs has been really taking off from computerized legs to, I guess, 60 Minutes just did a special the other day on prostheses with sensation, where somebody was able to feel the wife of their partner
Really?
through an
Wow.
artificial
About
limb.
that, huh?
Yeah, so it's like, and it's sensor technology. It's a lot of technology and healthcare coming together to really improve outcomes for people who've gone through some tragedy. Yeah.
What's the most challenging patient you've dealt with and their needs?
Well, so as far as like, I have worked with people who have had multiple amputations, so missing more than one limb. Part of that's because I did work for the Veterans Affairs, and so the service people coming back from various conflicts there was a lot of very traumatic, lots of scarring, lots of, multiple limb amputation. So there was a lot of loss there, more so than just your typical person who loses a limb from diabetes. But complexity is many tiered, because there's, just the number of limbs, or what that residual limb, that's what we call, like what people used to call the stump, like the residual limb, what it looks like, if there's skin scarring, or, adhesions where, if you've ever broken like a hand, like I broke my hand, and where they did the stitches, it got stuck, and, and every time I would bump my hand, it would hurt in that spot. Now imagine that I had to walk on that spot every day for every step, and there's this adhesion under there. So the way it healed, was part of the problem. That would be, horrible. So those kind of things would make it complex. And then the other thing is that my first boss told me the job is 90% psychology. And so
Really?
dealing with the mental,
Talking to the
that
person,
there's a lot to overcome.
Uh,
So you see somebody walking with an artificial limb out there at the mall, and no matter what their gait looks like, and that's what we call how they walk, no matter what their gait looks like, they are an amazing athlete. They are an amazing person with perseverance and, fortitude to get up and go through that and get walking. The energy or expenditure that they're doing just to walk across a flat floor is like if I were to get up and jog around the block, and how often do I really want to go do that, right? But they're doing that with every step they take. So it's a tribute to them for having the fortitude to overcome the obstacle of losing a limb.
how'd you get interested in this?
Okay, so it's kind of like I
Really
fell into it I fell into it in an obscure way. I used to do construction. I used to do carpentry and painting, and I kind of like worked in my 20s, physical labor. I had a person who we did house painting and repairs and such. And I moved to Texas, and I was working for this. I had a part-time job on the side type of thing. Anyhow, I was involved in a car accident, and after that car accident, I had a hard time walking. I couldn't feel my legs for a couple of days, and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to carry all this stuff up the ladder and get, get where I could see that career wasn't going to work much longer because I'd hurt my back. And I regained everything. It was just swelling. It was just, it wasn't like a spinal cord injury or anything. It was just bruising and swelling that created that. But while I was going to physical therapy for my back and learning about back pain and such, I was working with a physical therapist who I said to them, what am I going to do? And I was like, what does it take to do something like this? Because, they're like kind of like a gym teacher was what I thought I wanted to be when I was in high school. I wanted to be a gym teacher. And so here was this physical therapist, like telling me some exercises to do. And
This is my partner. I'm so happy she could be here to meet you.
okay, great.
Okay,
want me to
this is
stop talking?
Marge. Sit down.
Hi, Marge. How you
Orthotist.
doing?
She's what? Orthotist. Okay.
Yeah, I'm telling my story about how I got into prosthetics and orthotics in as many words as possible. No, I'm kidding. And anyhow, so just to finish up the story. So I was laying there doing physical therapy stuff, and I thought, well, I could do this. And the physical therapist explained to me, well, you can do this with an associate's degree. They have something called a physical therapist assistant. And I was like, okay, I hadn't gone to college yet at that point, and I was like in my mid-20s. So I went and decided to go to school for physical therapist assistant. As I was graduating from that program, we toured a prosthetics facility. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I should be doing, because it puts the building something together with the physical therapy piece of it, like getting to kind of tell people what to do and how to improve their strength and such. And so I went back to school for prosthetics and orthotics, and the rest is history.
Where was that school?
I went to the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center for prosthetics and orthotics. And I got, at that time, it was a bachelor's degree program, and with a certificate in both orthotics and prosthetics. So that was cool. And yeah, that was 1995. So I was older. I was one of the older students in the class. I was 35 years old and getting my degree. So finally, better late than never, you know.
So prior to that exposure, you really didn't have that direction.
Correct. I had no clue. Right. I did sort of flounder a lot in my youth.
Oh, none of us did that.
I made a few wrong turns. Yeah. But, you know, fortunately I had I had people that intervened, you know, in my physical therapy assistant program that was at the junior college in Austin, Texas. And I want to say Riverside Camp. But anyhow, there was a woman who was the instructor. Her name was Beverly Mashburn, and she sort of took me underneath her wing, her and her partner. And I believe at this point they've both passed, but they basically took me under their wing and really helped turn me around. Like they found me people to get me a pair of eyeglasses, basically, you know, because I was lost before I got into that. I was actually pretty lost. And so they helped me a lot. So it's like people like that in my life helped me become, you know, who I am and where I am. And, you know, it's I've done pretty well. I mean, I feel like I've done pretty well, and really with the help of others, you know, it's like people help me along the way. So I'm
Now
great.
you're helping people this way too.
Pardon me?
I said, now you're helping people in what you're doing today.
Oh yeah, my job is totally like my job is definitely a helping field, you know. And it's really, I mean, the best part of the job is that moment when somebody stands up and they're feeling their limb inside of a socket and they think, you can see it come across their face. I'm going to be able to do this. Like I am going to be able to do this. So that's like a huge moment of reward, you know. That's
Yeah.
like that's what I'm in it for, you know. And then I get to play with a lot of cool toys, a lot of technological toys, and it's fun. It's a great field. I really think it's like one of those things where high school students ought to know about this. And
I do too.
yeah, science and
We
math,
have
art, all of it.
interviewed many women in the trades. You'll see them on the collection.
Okay.
Okay. So, when did you know you were a lesbian?
You know, I knew that I was a lesbian before I knew what the word was. But I learned the word, like I knew, I think I've always been a lesbian, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like when we were little kids and we would play with house, I always wanted to be the dad because it would be like I get to go outside. Like
Because it would be what?
I'd get to go outside. Like I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll be out in the garage and, you know, let them do whatever they were going to do. And I didn't want to play with dolls and easy bake ovens or any of that. You know, but you know,
That's the wife's story.
yeah, yeah. And then the when I was 13 years old, I met who I now know. Well, I probably met lesbians before that. Like now in retrospect, in fact, the other day there was somebody on Facebook, my neighbor from 2 doors down is probably the first lesbian I knew.
Uh-huh.
And she was always on her porch and I would go and sit with her up on her porch. And, you know, it's actually kind of cute because, you know, she watched me grow up. Anyhow, but my math teacher's partner was in the parking lot and I built up a friendship with her. This was after I graduated from like 8th grade or something in the Catholic school schoolyard, you know. And so I just started chatting it up with her. And that person, I don't know, I had a friendship and it was a good thing. It was nothing improper, nothing like that. It was just you know, she listened to me, she talked to me. And one day there was some conversation and I was like, oh my gosh, are you one of those? And I couldn't say the word. And then I said, it begins with an L and ends with an N. And she said, yes. And then I said, I think I'm one too. And then I hung up.
That was good. You got your point.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of funny. But anyhow, so it was like I had named myself that. And then I remember asking my brothers, my oldest brother, like, what would you do if you found out your best friend was gay or whatever? And he was like, it wouldn't matter to me unless, of course, they tried to do something. And I was like, oh, so it's okay. In my brain, I just went, it's okay to be gay, but you got to be careful with who you let know and who you interact, you know, who you, whatever, approach, let's say.
Well,
Okay.
that was good information. It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, it is true. Well, and this was like the 70s. So that was like I was 13 in 1973 when I'd had that conversation. And so after that, it was just like, well, that's just who I am. I didn't really have a lot of thinking about like, am I a boy or am I a girl? Or I didn't have any of that per se. I do know like a lot, fast forward 50 years, and that seems to be a bit more of what the conversation ends up being around. Which I'm not really going to get into because that's not about my career. But
Yeah, your career.
at any rate, it's like, it's a similar struggle of still figuring out who we are, though, and in whether or not we're going to be safe. I mean, the safety factor is definitely a deal because, back then, you know, yeah, it's not like that was easy as people learned, that I was a lesbian. It was not safe. It was yet another thing to be unsafe,
Do you feel
another way to
safe
feel
now?
unsafe. Yeah.
How about now? Do you feel safe now?
Well, in 2023, I felt safer 10 years ago or 8 years ago, but I think that, we're in some interesting times right now. It's like we're having this whole backlash, um, you know, it's like we're recycling these old battles. And so I don't feel as safe right now, especially because I look like I look and I just go where I go. And this is the way I've always been. So I'm very easily pegged. And, I used to say, if people call me sir and it's going to get me faster service, great. I don't feel the need to correct anybody, right? But but now it's sort of like there's a lot more hate going on out there. So depending on where you are, you may not be, I don't feel safe everywhere. I was actually concerned about during Pride events, with large crowds of gay people basically gathered, and depending on where you are, like look at in Idaho, there was like some, bad things going on. So yeah, I don't feel as safe today as I did 8 years ago or, 10 years ago.
Agreement
So,
on that.
yeah,
We
yeah.
just don't know the future.
Correct. Right. We don't know the future.
Right.
Well, next question.
No. We're all in the helping professions. We're
Oh,
retired.
sweet.
And Marge is an orthopedic surgeon.
Oh, nice. Hi, Marge,
And
orthopedic
I
surgeon.
pulled her in here. So I knew you had that common experiences with patients.
I did get to go into the OR with the good surgeons who would let me come in to do like a post-op device, like a rigid post-op dressing, or even on occasion, some post-operative prostheses for the transtibials. That was actually really cool. So I would tell my friends, oh my God, I have to go in the OR today. And, that was actually really cool. Once you got past that smell of that burning,
That's not there all the time. We met in the operating room at LA County Hospital.
Oh, nice. All right. Yeah. I did a little bit of time at the LA County Hospital as a orthotist for a contractor. There was we were one of the contracted providers. So that was kind of cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what do you know?
I felt when I walked in to see the patient the first time, and I take their hand in mine and say, you got to do what I tell you and get there and you'll get through it.
Right.
And you could just feel them relaxed,
Yeah.
as they were told they could hang on to me because that's where we were going.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. The psychology of setting somebody's mind at ease. No longer was it just some random person's going to come and do something to me. That personal touch, seeing the whites of their eyes and them seeing yours and saying, I got this, I got you,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Good on
Oh,
you.
awful too, to lose a limb. Wonderful to be able to give that back.
Right. Well, it's kind of like it's the limb of your life a lot of times, right? So in a way, you're giving them life, and then we're giving them another life, a new life, and that's a good thing,
Yeah, having that prosthesis on so you can walk. It's huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and just like you said, do what I say. I would tell people all the time, okay, so I would make a leg and I'd bring it in and I'd set it down on the ground and it would be standing up by itself. And I would say, okay, you see this leg is standing up by itself. If you fall, it's not my fault because the leg I made stands up by itself. So if it hurts though, you got to tell me, because as good as I am, my name has 3 letters in it. They are EVE, not GOD. So it's never going to be as good as what you lost. But I can usually adjust or fix or do something to make it more comfortable for you. But I don't know what it feels like. So you got to tell me, and you got to tell me soon. Don't wait until it's a hole in your leg. Like I need to know right away. And, talk them in through the wearing schedule and all that, so they would get accustomed to it and bring them in and follow up. And,
You work in an office or a hospital or?
I worked both in private practice, and then I worked for the Veterans Affairs. So, and there definitely were differences in each. The first place I worked was a place called Austin Prosthetics, and this guy named Dennis Cole who owned it, and he had a wife who was a physical therapist. And those two were just amazing people, very committed. And it was really like, what can we do to help these people? That was the most important thing. The other thing is that the time was such that, if somebody needs some socks, you just give them some socks, take care of them, get them what they need. The how things were reimbursed perhaps allowed us to be able to do that. Reimbursement's gone down so much that it's really hard to, it's actually a challenge in healthcare today to actually get people everything they need, because the
Healthcare is
insurance
really-
companies may not,
It's really
want to play.
needs improving.
Yeah, we have definitely lots of opportunities. But on the other hand, there's always a way. It's kind of like there's always a way to kind of take care of people. And, that was the other thing too. It was never, with what I learned from Dennis, it's like anybody can make a leg. It's a lot harder, and the skill, the expertise is in knowing how to fix something and make it last, how to make that modification to make it workable, kind of like, before we had fast food, we actually used to grow stuff, and, you learned how to stretch a meal. It wasn't like throw it out because I can go buy some other piece of something cheap. We learned how to stretch a lot of things, right?
Have you mentored people?
Yeah, actually I have. So in our field, we call it, they have residency program. So I've had some residents who were my resident, like that I was helping them. How our degree works is you come out of school and then you work for a year or two doing so many hours, and you have to make so many devices of so many things. And I'm actually really proud that one of my residents is actually going to be getting probably a Thranhart lecture series for research. Not that that's so much about me as much as it's about that resident, but it's kind of cool that it was like I was part of their growth and development in the field, which is really kind of cool. So yeah, that's been fun. And I actually was just recently, I was helping a young man who's in Portland, Oregon, who just now passed his exams, like his repeat exam. So it's like I like to help people succeed. And
Right.
so that was fun. Yeah.
That's your whole job. Success.
Yeah, that's true. It is
Really
true.
is. How about
Yeah.
your sexuality? Has it been impediment, or has it been helpful?
It's been actually, I think it's been a non-issue in many ways. What is kind of cool though, so again, back to that first job where he was like, I had one of the guys tell me, whenever you go to tighten up a screw, this is like somebody's leg and you're gonna like make sure the parts are all tight and torque it down and all that. They would tell me like, it wouldn't hurt you to kind of go, ugh, like you're grunting, like you're giving it as much force. The truth is, we're not really tightening bolts that tight. It's like 10 Newton meters, 15 Newton meters, so that's not really like where you need to crank down on it. But that psychologically, somebody might want to know that what they have on is on their. So, that was kind of like a thing. But then again, I am one of those people who presents competently. And so I haven't really had an issue with like, I never came across as timid and, nervous. I kind of came across like knowing what I was doing, whether or not I actually did. Because the other thing I learned was that I can always say, well, let me take this to the back and work some magic. And then I could go to the back room with the prosthesis and like look at it and be like, how am I gonna, and get somebody else to come look at it. Like I never had a problem asking for help from somebody else because no person can know everything. And sometimes, you're so attached to something working, you don't see the obvious. And somebody else will look at it and be like, well, have you thought about this? And it'd be like, no. Thanks for
Thank
pointing
you.
that out, So, yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
my sexuality hasn't been an issue. And, it also kind of just helps that, especially with the VA, it's like, I would often tell the soldiers, it's like, thank you for your service. Because of you, I get to be me, and there are those that went over well, and there are others that maybe weren't like that, but they got the sentiment of that. It's like, as a female or as a woman, I'm not in some country where I'm like, don't show anything but your eyeballs, or, or get over there. I'm not in that country. I hope we don't go to being that kind of a country where my movements are restricted just because of my gender, let alone my sexuality. These people went to war to protect people like me and like themselves, to be able to move freely, to have freedom.
So
And
now are you moving to a new career, not career, but to a new job? You said you were moving.
you know what? Yeah. So I was actually down here to pursue an opportunity that was listed, and it was a big change. It would create a big change for me. And I was offered a position, tentatively offered, and with the range and blah, 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 go through this whole boarding process, done all that. HR's told me I've cleared that hurdle. And interestingly enough, today at noon, I have essentially decided that no answer is an answer. I'd asked for something, we were like doing a salary negotiation, and I asked for something, and they haven't said yes and they haven't said no, but it's like my housing and all kind of things are like domino effects that, perhaps no answer is my answer, that this isn't what I should do at this time. Who knows what the future holds, but at this time, that might not be what I'm supposed to do. And so I'm just going to have peace with, go back home and see what other door or window will open.
It'd be nice if they gave you an answer.
Well, and it's okay. Like I said, I guess it's like someplace in Star Trek or some sci-fi movie where no answer is the ansser, and that's okay. It's like, I can only control so much, and then I have to let go. That's like recovery. But, it's kind of like just being okay with what is, accepting what I can change, what I can't change. I can't make them do anything. And so maybe this is just not what I'm supposed to do. And I'm
That's
okay
probably
with
true.
resting that, Yeah.
Are you still employed right now? Or are you?
Right now I'm retired. I've been retired. I actually retired in 2021.
Uh-huh.
And I was enjoying retirement. That's the other thing. It's like, do I really want to get up and go to work at 8 o'clock, at 4:30, at this stage of the game? And I don't really have to. I mean, it was, okay, so I was looking at this. I wanted to save money for an RV. I wanted to go buy an RV because I wanted to do some traveling. And I thought, golly, that's a lot of money to take out of my savings. Because, we're all on fixed incomes now that we're retired. It's
Yeah.
not like making more. And so I was kind of considering that, and I was like, maybe I could go back to work and get a job and make money to do that, like we did when we were in high school. Yeah, so I can still work, and I can still, I still have my credentials, and I might do that closer to home instead of having to uproot myself. I was just following I was
How long is
following an opportunity, and I believe there will be others.
How long is your training?
So for prosthetics and orthotics, currently the training program is you get a master's degree, and then you go and do a residency, and then you take some exams, and so it probably takes whatever it takes you to get your master's degree, and then a couple years after that, 18 months at least, I think, if you do a dual certification residency program.
Are there
So
any scholarships for this, or any funding for people that don't have funds?
there are scholarships through the various O&P organizations. So you can qualify for that. So there is, and then there's always your federal grants for college, but I don't know of any particularly directly just O&P. Then there might be, but I didn't apply for one, so I didn't seek one. I worked my way through school. So when I went to O&P school, I worked PRN on the weekends doing the physical therapy assistant work. So I
Mhm,
worked
that
every
was good.
weekend. I made the money to pay for the hourly rate for the student hours for that quarter, for that semester in school. So I paid as I went, and what great fortune that I was able to do that, It helped
Nice.
that I was going to an in-state school as an in-state student, and that the program was, I mean, I don't know, maybe college was more affordable than it is now. I definitely know student loans didn't have 7 and 8 and 12 and 15 and whatever the percentage rates are. I think when I
No.
got a loan, it was like 2%, which was doable, and it was fixed. It wasn't a variable rate. I think that would be one thing they could do is fix the rate at a low rate. Use the Fed fund rate for student loans.
Right.
They're going to loan money to banks at some 0.5%, then why not loan money to people who want to go to college at the same rate and make it a fixed rate? Your loan is at 0.5
I
for the
did
entire
a lot of
duration.
papers on
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah,
I mean, there's people who say, let's do it for free. I get that too, but if you have to loan money, make it, instead of it being usury, like, we don't really want you to go to college, we're going to charge you too much. You want us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Well, we're willing to do that, but we don't want to be constantly knocked in the knees while we're trying to pull up our pants.
that was a graphic.
It was the graphic, I know.
Right. Well,
I could have
except-
said something else that would have been more graphic, but I
Good.
decided against that
Thank you.
in the flash of a moment.
So do you have any questions you'd like to ask us about what we're doing, who we are?
Well, you did tell me, like, it's like, this is a project, I guess. Yeah. So what's your main focus on? What is your main focus at your?
To be a
Oh,
source for women, lesbians. We started at 30 and then went up. And for them to be able to search on in archives, listen to other women, and get ideas about what they can do instead of trying to find it all in some library. Or that doesn't, I like personal information,
Right.
like you're doing, right? I can hear that, I can apply it to myself. The colleges have supported us. You can always support them too, they appreciate that, but the archives are available to many universities now because of this project, which is fun.
Yeah.
So I think it's that time of life when people are searching, it's lonely.
Yeah.
And this can give them a place to go. For example, the Cal State Dominguez Hills has a group there, I think it's called Queer, and they can go in there and they have a beautiful archives and get help researching things like this.
And
Or-
Cal State Dominguez Hills actually is one of the accredited orthotic and prosthetic programs.
See,
They actually have a very
great.
good program.
Yeah, good.
So, yeah, I mean,
So
Yeah.
now it can lead right to you. We have.
sure. Actually, if there's anybody who wants to talk about, how I got into O&P or how they can get into O&P, or, I'm happy to talk to anybody, because the cool thing about this field is it takes, if you like art and this is like sculpture with a purpose, if you like material sciences, oh my gosh, like, this is, you're working with everything from metal, wood, carbon, acrylic resins, all kind of different plastics. I mean, so if you're interested in that, if you're interested in, just general healthcare, it's great. There's a lot of angles to this, and it's applied. Everything that you're, whether it's math or science, whatever you're learning, it's all applied, even biology, even like your skin, what your tissues are doing, like all of that. And then nowadays with all of the, the combination of like robotics, technology,
Robotics
and,
are in.
and
You know
implants
about that, right?
and, osseointegration. I mean, there's just so much that it's like just about everything is touching orthotics and prosthetics these days. So, you could do this.
Do you use
and
your
feel like you
robotics
got a
in your
purpose.
work?
Excuse me?
Do you use robotics in your work? At this time?
Not me personally. The closest I got to robotics was I got to work on one of the projects for the multi-articulated prostheses that, you know, every single joint, the shoulder could lift, and, you know, I'm actually not sure if I'm allowed to say the name of it anymore. Anyhow, so I got to work with, I got to work on a research project for one of these multi-articulated limbs.
So if you knew that your life was going to end shortly, how would you like to be remembered?
Oh, wow, that would have been a question. I was gonna go here. I would like to be remembered. I would like to be remembered as somebody who was very caring and who gave my all to whatever I was doing. You know, to really put my heart into it and go for it, without reservation, to just go for it.
That's good. So thank you.
Well, thank you.